Hi there, in this video we're going to build this grid of text and images. Right now we've got a logo and our navigation, but no main content for this site. So let's take a look at this finished example. So when we're building responsive websites, what we need to understand is something called rows and columns. And the best way to visualize that is to look at our desktop view. Now in my desktop view, just like Excel, this first one here, there is one row with one column. Great. A little bit further down though, there is one row with two columns. And the last one down the bottom is one row with four columns. So let's take a look when it's at tablet screen. So I drag it smaller, you can see, and eventually it breaks. Okay, and in here, nothing much changes. It's still one row, one column, one row, two columns. But down the bottom here, where it was one row, four columns, it's now broken up. It's still one row, okay? But what's happened is there's not enough room for these other two to fit. So there's one row, but there's two columns of two. When I get down to mobile, again, there's still the top here, there's one row with one column. This one here is still one row, but the two columns don't fit side by side, so they've snapped down underneath each other. Same with the four image grid down the bottom. Now, when talking about these image boxes and text boxes and columns and rows, often people will refer to it as the grid. So let's go off and structure our grid. Okay, so back in Dreamweaver, we're going to jump to our HTML, which is source code. We've finished with our header now. Now we're going to put some stuff in the main. I'm going to put a return in just to space them out. And what I want to do is I want to add a div. Okay, div is just a division of space, and we're going to call this one a div class, and we're going to give it a name. We're going to call it row, and then I'm going to close it off. Okay, and inside of that row, remember our top one had one row, one column. So let's, inside of here, type in div class, and I'm going to call this one column or col, and close it off, and it finishes it up. So that's the first section of my design. Next thing I want to do is I need another row, but it has two columns. So return in. Now to speed things up, we're going to use a helpful Dreamweaver trick. So instead of writing div class, row, close, those types of things, what we're going to do is we're going to type in dot row. Okay, that's the class that I want to create. And if I hit tab, it assumes that I mean a div class and fills it all in for us. Super helpful. Okay, let's put in our col. We can do the same thing here. So col, and just to make sure you hit tab instead of return, and voila, it pre-fills it out. Let's do the same thing underneath. Okay, let's do another col tab, and we've filled out one row with two columns. The next bit is to do our one row with four columns. Just under here, let's put in our row, tab, enter, and now we're going to put four columns in. And another cool little trick, you could just keep typing in .col or copy and paste it to get all four. A nice little trick is though, I put .col and then asterisk, which is times, and I want to times it by 4. Watch this, if I hit tab, hey, I've got four classes with col all attached, ready to go. Now, before we move on, we have to fix our rows. Earlier on for our desktop view, we set the float for our logo to the left and the navigation to the right. To make sure everything behaves correctly, we need to do something called clearing the float. Let's have a quick look at the PSD comp. Remember, our design is essentially rows and columns. In web design, this is called the grid system, which is a popular way for designing websites. In order to get the columns to fit into their assigned rows, in this case, the two text areas that make up the columns in this row, or the four images that make up the columns of this row, we'll need to add a little bit of code here. Now jump to your CSS sheet, and we'll put this code in just before the tablet and desktop breakpoints. You can copy and paste this code from the downloaded sample files, or you can pause the video here and just type it out. Great, so the code here will get our rows and columns to behave themselves. Now what we have to do is start adding some of the content to the page. And before we do, let's have a little look at our Photoshop comp. We're going to be adding this text as a heading in Dreamweaver. See, this is the most important heading because it's the biggest, and this is going to be the next, then this one here. We're just trying to work out the order of importance in terms of the headings, so when we start doing it in code, we know what we're doing. Now, what I've just noticed here is that everything's still lowercase. Now, remember, I was playing around earlier trying to impress you with real-time browser preview. Now we could go back to our CSS sheet, figure out the style it was controlling, uppercase, lowercase. It's a really good time to show you a cool feature in Dreamweaver. If I right-click this A class here, and I can say Quick Edit, well, what it does is it kind of burrows into the CSS sheet without having to open it up. It kind of digs out and finds all the styles that are applying to this word food. Okay, in this case, the font's coming from this HTML one, but over here, can you see there's a style here? That's my style that has the lowercase. Okay, so I'm going to change it back to upper. What it is, it's just a really quick way of editing existing CSS classes without having to jump back from one to the other. Let's close it down. Thank you, Quick Edit. And just to tidy this up, we originally just threw in our image there just to get started quickly. And down the bottom here, we started using rows and columns. Let's do the same for header. I'd like there to be a header with one row, one column, just to match everything else we've been doing. So I'm going to drop that down here. I'm going to put in dot row tab, and the row opens and closes just there. I'm going to cut this last part and pop it all the way around just after my nav. So it wraps up that whole nav. So the nav ends up in a row and then a column. I'm going to grab him, put him just in here as well. Okay, so I've got my row, then I've got my column, and inside of that is my image and my nav. So our header tag is sorted. Now it's time to start adding content to our main tag. Inside our main tag here is where all the main content for your page goes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our headings. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to start typing in H. You can see all the different H's. There's a heading 1, a heading 2, so it's in level of most importance. So back here, I'm going to put in H3, close it off, and I'm going to put in the text, copy and paste it because my spelling's terrible. Okay, and you can see my H3 appears. Let's do the next one, which was going to be an H4. Close it, copy and paste it. And the next one is my H1, my most important, and that's Urban Strokes. Now I think the next thing to do is to make the box that these bits of type go in. Let's have a quick look at Photoshop. So this is the box we need to make. Okay, the moment we've just got basic text, let's put in this nice big box with this image in the background. Now I could style this col here. The only trouble with col is that you can see it appears over and over again. So if I add a background image to it, it's going to appear as a background on all my div tags. So what I want to do is make a little unique one. I'd like a div class to wrap around all of these guys. So I want to wrap it around that. So remember there's an opening and close. So I'm going to do the opening here. So this one's going to be div class and this one's going to be hero. I'm going to call it, close it off. Now it's closed straight away. What I'd like to do is grab that close. I'm going to cut it, and just put it underneath. Okay, that means when I click on hero, you can see it highlights that they're all inside of that hero box. And I'm just going to tab things along to make it look pretty. Highlight all these guys, tab them along once, and grab these guys and tab them over. So we've created this class here called hero, but we don't have it in our style sheet. So let's go make it down the bottom here. Before my tablet, so I'm going to put in a good few returns just so that I know I'm putting it up here in my mobile view. I'm going to create this one called period hero, squarely brackets. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add a background image. So background image, we'll click on URL and we'll click browse. And on my desktop, the assets that we've downloaded, okay, there's one in here called hero, and click open. Now you can see it appears over here, okay? It's just in the bottom right corner. Watch this. If I hover above it here in code view, I get a little preview, okay? And you can see we're just getting the top left snippet of it. It's actually in there. Watch this. If I drag it back out there, there's the image. Okay, it's just not doing exactly what I want. So we're going to add a bit more styling. And the main one we want, hang on, semicolon, don't forget him. The main one we want is something called background, and there's one in here called background size. Okay, and this cover one is going to do what we want. Semicolon to finish it. You can see he's all squished in there now. Now what we want to do is add a bit more padding around the edges of this one. So jump into here, padding, so 20 for the top, 20 for the right, 50 for the bottom, and 20 for the left. Semicolon. Now the last things to finish it off, let's look at color. Now if you use color just by itself, it styles the font. So the font inside this div tag called hero is going to be, I'm going to use the color picker. I'm going to drag this up to white, hit return, put in a semicolon, and all the text inside this hero box becomes white. Let's also get it to be text, align, and center, semicolon. Nice. So let's start styling our H1s. We're going to use the H1s to push the box open. The H1s were something predefined, okay, and they're called tags. Classes have these periods in front of it, and we get to create them. The things that are already existed, like this H1 or a UL or an ally, things that are predefined, we don't have to put the period in front. So I'm going to style him, curly braces, and what I would like to say is let's do the font size first. Okay, and we're going to use a pixel size of 57 pixels, semicolon. You can see it adjusted there. Let's do text transform. Okay, and this one is going to be uppercase, semicolon. Great, the font weight is a bit thick. By default, it's bold, so we're going to switch it out to 200, semicolon. See, they got nice and thin. And in terms of the margin, okay, we'll do a margin at the bottom there to push the box out a little bit. So let's go pixels, 60 pixels, just to give it some space underneath and match our Photoshop document. Let's do that one at the top now. It's going to be our H3. Okay, curly braces. Now, because of this, it's all very similar to the H1. So I'm going to grab all the styling, paste it in, and just adjust it. So the font size for this one is going to be 16. It's going to remain uppercase. The font weight's going to be 200. The bottom margin is going to be 120. Great. Okay, the next bit is that Sebastian. He's my H4. So I'm going to copy and paste, You, my friend, are an H4. Font size the same. I'm not going to force them to be uppercase. The font weight is perfect, but I'm going to change the bottom margin to 35. Now the next thing to tackle is that read more button. Now we're going to switch over to our source code, which is our HTML, and we'll pop it just underneath our H1 here. And now what we want is another one of those links. Okay, we did the hyperlinks up here and it was a href equals, and we had that little trick. Remember, we typed in a and then hit tab, okay, and it filled it in. We're going to be even cleverer, and we're going to do a dot, and we're going to add a class to it, button, then hit tab, and it fills it out and applies the class to it all in one big go. That's awesome. Okay, let's type in read more, and let's go style this button. So over in styles, down here, we're going to type in period button, curly braces, return. The first style we're going to use is something called border. Okay, and what I'd like to do is I want it to be 2 pixels. I'd like it to be a color of FFF. Okay, use the slide there. And I'd like it to have a solid line around the outside. Great. Semicolon to finish it. You can see over here, I've got a 2 pixel white solid line around the outside. Now to make it look pretty, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some padding around the outside. So padding, and let's do 8 pixels top and bottom and 30 pixels left and right. Let's play around with now the border radius because it's a bit square. Let's go border radius, there you are, and we'll give it a radius of 30 pixels, 30px even, semicolon, and you can see there, we're getting close. Let's make the color. We'll be using the color picker, but we can type in FFF, one of the few HTML colors that I actually know off by heart. And we want to get rid of the underline. We've done that before, remember, text decoration, and we're going to select none, semicolon. Nice work. So at this point, our asset has a responsive menu, and now we have our hero div that has all of its headings, but we need to add the rest of the main content. So watch the next video and we'll build our colored boxes, add the 4 images and our footer.